Jeff Ogilvy survives Wingfoot.
Now the moment Aaron Baddeley has waited for.
Gary Webb is the 5-time Australian Open champion.
Golf at its best by one of the best in golf, Peter Thompson.
Standing in front of a crowd like this today and win the PGA Championship is pretty special.
He's done it at last. Greg Norman.
Matt Jones gets his name on the Stonehaven Cup.
Leash been to 11 under. Now we've got a new leader, kids.
Here it is, Adam Scott, a life changer. Coming up next, you have unrestricted access to golf across Australia and the world. Thanks to Golf Australia, we're going inside the ropes.
G'day everybody, welcome to episode 29 of Inside the Ropes, getting towards the end of 2017. We started way back when, and certainly from a domestic perspective, our highlight weekend has probably come and gone. There's still a lot of golf to be played in Australia over the summer, but what a fortnight it has been. I'm sure that's going to be front and centre on the program on the way through today. Ryan Ruffels going to join us on the show as well, one of our very special early guests on the podcast going to join us as we wrap up what's been a big 2017. Couldn't have done it without Mark Hayes, who is absolutely heroic down at Curlewis Golf Club on Monday, walking 38.2 kilometres, playing 72 holes to raise money for melanoma treatment as part of the Longest Day Cancer Council of Victoria. It was an honour to be in your presence on that day, Hazy.
Ditto, Andy. It was nerve-wracking. I was actually really nervous before we started, legitimately. But as we got going, it was fascinating and a great experience, as you predicted it would be. Very fulfilling to knock in the last putt. And to be honest, I'd played 36 a few times in my life and always sort of tend to get tired around 29, 30, 31. Didn't feel that at all, to be honest. And it was only in the last 3 or 4 holes where my game sort of started to wobble a little bit, which probably shows you that it's a mental thing rather than a physical thing. It's a really good challenge, and I was a bit wobbly on Monday night afterwards, but I bounced back really well. I don't know about you.
Oh, no, I was in pain the next day. I felt like I was 105. I really did. I was exhausted. It's tiring, but it's kind of fitting that the bloke sitting alongside you is here today because he and his mob are doing a bit of work down at Curlewis, which if you have never been down the Bellarine Peninsula and played on the golf course, it's well worth a trip. It's a very, very challenging, competitive, fun golf course to play, and a golf club. We should mention this on the way through before we start talking business of the day. It's a great golf club to go and visit. Mike Clayton joins us again. It's a good golf course.
It is good.
It's getting better and better.
It's getting better. Yeah, they've still got that one shocking hole, the 6th, which is about to be repaired, but the rest of it's pretty solid. We've done not big amounts of work. We've moved a few tees and recut a few bunkers, filled some in, so it's taken some trees out, which have helped it. But it's a good golf course.
It's amazing to see the aesthetic differences the removal of some bunkers have had, and some smoothing of previously sort of mounded areas, and the eradication of a lot of pointless rough. And now it's got this just beautiful, I think it's couch clates, isn't it?
Yeah.
Couch coverage and rolling land between greens and the next tee sort of connecting. It just looks beautiful, and it's only getting better. And huge thanks to Brendan Caligari and all the crew down there. The hospitality was first class. It was worth doing just for that.
No doubt.
The worst bunkers are the bunkers that only affect bad players but don't make the game more interesting for them. So the bunker on the first at Metro, I've never been in it, but it affects my old mate Peter Hurst, who's 80, who can't hit it very far anymore. It's right in play for him, but it makes the hole much more interesting for him. And the bunker at the front of the 5th at Metro makes the game interesting. Again, I've never been in it, but it makes the game more interesting for players who, when that bunker's in play for them. But there were some bunkers at Curlewis that did neither. They neither made it more interesting or made it better. They were just they caught the bad shots of bad players.
I feel like I'm going to bowl up a half volley outside off stump for you here to just crash through covers and smash into the pickets for 4, but it never, and this is probably a message to golf course managers and potential golf course designers down there, that when you plant a tree as a little sapling, imagine what it's going to look like, and imagine what it's going to do to the hole in 20 or 30 years' time when it grows into a dirty big tree, because there's you talk about the 6th, I mean, that hole, I don't know whether it was a good hole when they first designed it, but it's now a ridiculous hole because of the size of the trees down on the left for your second shot. I mean, it's You've got to be very careful when you start planting trees on golf courses because they are going to grow into big things.
Yeah, it was probably... Well, the problem is that with the whole dog legs at about 400 yards away, so it's sort of dog legs halfway up the second shot. But if there were no trees on the corner and there was a ground hazard, it'd be fine. You'd be playing across a mean hazard on the ground, but you could at least see where you were going and play where you were going. But it kind of forces you to sort of play a shot and a half to the corner or kind of snipe it around those trees. Or it's just a disastrous hole, but that's fine. I mean, we fixed the 13th hole, the 12th hole, the par 5 around the corner. That was another one smothered with trees on the corner, and you pull them out, and it's just, once you're asking players to go over hazards on the ground, you're not discriminating between players who can hit the ball high in the air and players who can't.
Is there a good par 5, this is a question without notice, is there a good par 5 anywhere in the world where for your a genuine three-shotter, it has to be, obviously, where for your third shot, you are routinely hitting into the green a longer club than you're playing for your second shot? Is it a rule of thumb that it goes without saying that you can't have a good par 5 where that exists? Do you know what I mean? Have I explained myself?
Yeah, you have. Not really. I mean, the 7th at Pine Valley, if you drive in the trees, you can only pitch out to the start of the grade.
I'm talking about if you find fairway,
yeah, No, there's not. Not one single hole where you're hitting less of a club for your second shot than you are for your third shot. Because you're jammed into a corner like that.
I did that twice the other day, just for the record. Into the wind, drive a 5-iron 3-wood.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it's a crazy hole.
Just doesn't make any sense. But the course is unbelievably fun to play. It's challenging for all players. And can I just re-emphasise the entire staff, Brendan in particular, they will make a day down at Curlewis just enjoyable. From the moment you drive through the gates, you play a game of golf, go and have a feed, drive out of the gates, you'll have a great time down there. So that's that. And good luck to anybody who's about to embark upon the same thing in the last couple of weeks of December. It's a great thing to do and raising a lot of money for Cancer Council Victoria, which is a great thing. The 2 big weeks of Australian golf have come and gone. You and I feel so validated, Hazy. We've tried to get this hashtag Golden Era thing trending along the way. We get a 24-year-old and a 22-year-old winning our Australian major championships in the men's side of the game. It was fantastic.
It was, for so many reasons. It would have been nice, and I'm sure Clates will venture an opinion on this too in a second, but it would have been nice for Jordan Zunic to be able to reap the benefits of a victory with the European Tour card, which Cam Smith arguably won't be able to take up, or won't want to take up, I should say. But, to have 2 young guys stamp their authority on world-class fields, I think is the key, not only to win the big Australian events, but to know that they can roll Sergio Garcia, or to know they can roll Jordan Spieth and Jason Day and Adam Scott, huge. And for their peers to be in the same field at the same time and, realise that, I can beat those Cams. I've beaten them plenty of times before. There they are sticking it to Spieth and to Garcia. Bugger it, I can do that. That's the big win, I reckon, for everyone.
Yeah, it was. It seems bizarre to think it was a pity that Cam Smith won, given he hasn't won a tournament before, really. Obviously the team thing in Zurich, but so it was a massive deal for him to win a tournament. But it would have been so much more useful for Jordan Zunic to have won, because it would have given him a 2-year exemption in Europe. I mean, if Cam Smith, it seems crazy to say, but it's not going to change his career one dot winning the Australian PGA. It's a great tournament to win. It's nice that he won it, and he fully deserved to win it. But it would have made such a massive difference to Zunic to win that, which is the problem all our Australian kids have, is getting somewhere overseas to play. And you talk about 2 big tournaments. I mean, when we were playing 30, 35 years ago, we had 15 or 16 tournaments in which to, even though the money wasn't that big, to build up a bank to go and play overseas, when we could just turn up on Mondays and play. You could turn up in Europe when I was a kid on Monday and play. You didn't even need a tour card. Go qualify. And if you made the cut, you played the next week. So in many ways, it was a much more democratic way of playing. It was a shambles to organise, but and you never knew if you were playing a lot. But you could, a kid like Jordan Zunic could have turned up in the first week in Madrid in April on the European Tour, which is when it started, played on Monday, shot 72, 73, got in the tournament, shot 73, 73, made the cut. He's in the next week in the Italian Open. He goes to the Italian Open, he shoots 73, 73, makes the cut, goes to the next week at the French Open or wherever it was, and if he'd played well for 10 or 15 weeks, he would made the top 60 and he was away to go the next year. The path is so much more difficult now, which is why for him that winning that tournament on the Gold Coast would have been such a huge step.
Yeah, that's the obvious, and it's right that you mention it, but it meant. You could tell it meant a lot to Cam Smith, Queensland boy, to win. won it. It meant a lot to him.
Oh yeah.
And I know you're saying it from a completely. I understand why you're saying what you're saying, but we shouldn't. No one here's begrudging Cam Smith for winning that tournament.
And what it reminded me of, he's not a flashy player. It reminded me of watching him when he won the Australian Amateur, playing Jeff Drakeford. Drakeford was 4 up. He hit a wedge to the 13th at Commonwealth, the par 5, and he drove it on the 14th green. And Cam Smith was 4 down. And I'm thinking, well, surely he's going to take a driver out and at least have a go at it. He took his 3-iron out and bumped it up the fairway. He actually wedged it in the bunker and went 5 down. And it was just a procession really to the finish before Jeff Drakeford won, except that Drakeford started missing greens and Cam Smith kept hitting him and he shook hands. He won 3 and 2 in the end. And the same thing sort of happened. He just kept grinding it out without doing anything flashy, and there he was at the end. He'd beaten them all. So he's to underrate his skills is to underrate him as a player, because he's very. And he, watching on TV, he made a bunch of one-headed follow-throughs with his drive, and you think, God, where's that gone? And it would bounce in the left half of the fairway. And come on, mate. I mean, there are guys who are wishing they could hit that straight with both hands on it. So,
and let's not forget he dunked a couple too. So his score could have been better. And I really like Andy that both weeks that he's played in the Australian major events, he's rolled out on a Sunday in the maroon top.
Yeah, no, I think that's not accidental.
No, it's far from accidental. Yeah, he loves the maroons. He's a huge Queensland rugby league supporter particularly, but generally a passionate Queenslander. First thing he mentions is Wantima, his old club in northern suburbs of Brisbane. He's mad for it. He above all others, he's the one who says, I want to come back and win a handful of Stonehaven Cups. I want to win this event. And it means something to him. Because I think he did, in his early amateur career, he did so much without actually getting the chocolates. Then he figured out how to win. And I think that might hopefully, anyhow, be what happens here now.
He's going to put himself, he's 24, he's going to put himself in the frame to win a lot of tournaments, I reckon. Where, it's going to depend on luck and closing and other players. But I think over the next 10 or 15 years, we're going to see the name Cameron Smith on the leaderboards, on Sundays, a lot. He's because of the reasons you mentioned, Clates. He doesn't rely on, a hot week necessarily to get a job done.
Yeah, and I think he's the one player who stands out above the other ones in terms of playing more an American style. Yeah. He hasn't got the picture perfect swing, but he knows how to get it in the hole, Clates, and we've talked about that for ages.
He's a great wedge player,
his 100 in is just exemplary. And I reckon we'll see that really come to light in the next few years in the US.
Any word on that? I want to ask you both of you about Adam Scott, right? He misses the cut, starts the year, I think, official world golf ranking, and we understand he's taken time off, so that's going to affect his ranking, right? But he starts the year 7th in the world, and he finishes the year 31st. It feels like priorities for Adam Scott are changing the bigger his family gets, and only he's free to tell us how significant a change in his outlook and his competitiveness and want to compete and grind, and he can tell us all of that. But what is, to you two, look into the crystal ball, what happens to Adam Scott in the big picture game of golf in the next 2 years?
I'll tee off, Cleans.
Yeah, you want to tee off first? Yeah, okay. I'm not going to tee off, so you can tee off if you want to.
No, I'm not going to tee off on him. I just think, he's still, you see his comments this week that, my best is still ahead of me. I think he needs to put that on the table early next year, because I don't think he'll want to have an extended period where he doesn't get into the winner's circle. I think mentally it'll become a grind for him, because he still talks as if he's physically at his peak and his best is still to come, as well as his best golf. I've been of the opposite opinion for the last couple of years. Is his birth certificate says you got to get it done soon, Adam. And I think if he doesn't start the next season well, or at least showing signs of improvement, if that dribbles into his mindset, then maybe it's an issue. But you have to believe him. He's done so much, and he's bounced back. He had a pretty ordinary 2015 and had an awesome 2016 that took him to number 7 at the end of last year's rankings. So I think there's a lot riding on the first 2 or 3 months. He won't be back until probably Riviera or something like that.
Probably, yeah.
So from there until, through May. Is that the PGA next year? Or is that coming in the year after?
In May, yeah, I think, yeah, the PGA's in May, I think, next year.
PGA, so it'll be, Players, Masters, PGA, and I think that's his crucial time to strike.
What are you seeing when you look at Adam Scott now, Clates?
I see the same player I always saw, which is probably a great swing, who can play well. And you see he didn't hit the ball well in Queensland, but which is not surprising. He hasn't hardly played. But I see a great swing that I see enduring for a long time. It depends how much he wants to play, how much he wants to grind and practice. But the putters, great ball strikers like that rarely are great putters. He's never had to be a great putter. He's always been able to get by with just decent putting, whereas some guys can't get by with it without putting the ball really well.
He's the anti-Cam Smith.
Yeah, he doesn't. Well, he's a better wedge player than a putter, probably, Smith, but he doesn't need to be a great putter to survive on the tour by any means, or a great putter to win. But having said that, as he showed at Augusta when he did win, you've got to make putts to win at some point. But
absolutely,
there were guys who had to be great putters, and Nicklaus was a great putter because he didn't miss when it counted. But I remember asking Tom Weiskopf once who the best putter was. He said, well, Nicklaus was. He never missed when he had to. So what about Ben Crenshaw and Bob Charles? He said, well, they had to be great putters. And Adam doesn't have to be a great putter, which doesn't mean he doesn't have to make great putts to win tournaments. But it's not like he's relying on his putting and his ball striking and his swing's always going to be there.
Does he have to make a decision on the putter? Or has he made the call now? We're going to see him using the big.
No, I think that hopefully that smashed the long putter. He missed the cut with it. Dump that.
So
he's putted well enough over so many years with a short putter.
Of course he has.
I mean, he had a streak, obviously, and it's famous because it was the Masters, because of the Masters Championship within that. But, he's a good enough putter without that. He doesn't need that.
And unless you're going to anchor the long putter, you're not going to putt any better with it than you are with a short putter.
Correct.
And the only two guys who are putting better with a long putter than they were before are the two guys who many people think are anchoring it.
I don't know whether you're aware of it, but Tiger came back to golf.
Did he?
Yeah, he did. He started playing again. And Ricky...
I must have missed it.
No one even talked about the fact that Fowler shot 11 under to win the stupid thing. Yeah. I mean, no one cares about the tournament, really. But he did, and we should put that on the record, that it was clearly a hell of a round that Fowler put together to win the thing, irrespective of, how much, and I know how you feel about the event, Hazy, you've let us, in no uncertain terms, know about that. But what did we observe about Woods in terms of the way he competed? He obviously is still a bit of rust in his game. The third round, when everyone was struggling, he particularly struggled, got a couple of birdies back late in his round, which I think was encouraging. He didn't turn 40 the front into sort of 80 overall, which I think was a really positive thing. What did you make of Tiger Woods' return to competitive golf?
Well, his swing looked powerful. It's that smash. He had a couple of smashing 2-irons, 260 yards, and he drove it pretty straight. His swing looked... I mean, as Finchy said the other day, he said, there's nothing Tiger Woods is doing there's nothing Jason Duffner does that Tiger Woods can't do right now. And Jason Duffner won a major a few years ago, so which was Finchy's view on whether Tiger can win a major or not. Well, Tiger can do most things that guys who win majors occasionally can do. As Hank Haney said, you've got to avoid three-putting, double chipping and penalty shots. And he had a bunch of double chips, which is still the question of can he still chip the ball at Augusta off the short grass? And I guess he had a few three putts, and he probably took a couple of penalty shots. I don't know, I'm not sure, but he's got to eliminate that stuff if he wants to win now, because he's not that much better than everyone else. So, 15 years ago he could do that stuff and still win because he was that much better, but he's clearly not that much better than Thomas or Spieth or Ram or the guys at the top of the game now.
I didn't learn much at all. I agree with pretty much everything that Clayton said, except I just don't think that anything less than 71 or 70 holes, probably minimum of quality golf, gets you anywhere in a tournament these days, whereas he once could have got away with the stretch, which he never used to have, by the way. But now he has these holes where he just blows up, and I don't think you can do that. Jason Day proved that this year. You can't have 6 or 9 hole stretches where you struggle and expect to win. And I absolutely think that Tiger, if he's going to win another major, it will be at Augusta National, where his wayward drivers aren't penalised nearly as much as they are at a US Open specifically. But if, as also Clayton says, he can't chip well on the tightly mown fairways or around those greens with the swales that are out of control, he's got issues. I still can't see him winning a tour event, let alone a major. But I stand to be proven wrong.
No one knows. We're all guessing, but it was never going to happen. But he would have been better off coming and playing the Australian Open, the Australian PGA, than fooling around the Bahamas.
Can I ask you a quick? Go on.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that stands to reason. I would go again if we could be bothered. But I just think that tournament sucks monumentally, and I'm just still really battling with coming to terms with seeing Ricky Fowler jump up a couple of rungs in the world rankings.
It's a joke. It's a joke what the PGA, what Fincham did for him. It's a joke that they gave it, the kind of status that it needed to have to seemingly encourage the field that he got. It's crazy. It can't stand any intellectual rigour at all. Like he's done a mate a favour. Or they've done the Tour a favour, and the Tour probably owes Tiger a favour or two.
Oh, no doubt.
There's no doubt it does. I mean, these guys, Koepka wins the US Open and makes $2.1 million for winning it. He's not making $2 million for winning a US Open without Tiger Woods.
Correct.
So, they probably deserve to give him a favour, do him a favour along the way.
Although Eddie Pepperell put out an interesting tweet last week saying, well, I don't think Tiger's made that much difference to golf in terms of the money. He said every other sport in America has gone up by the same amount.
Yeah, but is golf seen as a growth sport? It's probably only seen as a growth sport because of Tiger. I mean, you could argue that because it's hypothetical, but I take Eddie Pepperell's point, and I love his contribution to the conversation of golf. But I think it goes without too much dispute. I think that the financial impact that Tiger's had on golf.
They signed some massive TV deals on the back of
through TV.
The 97 Masters.
And all those sports have had their absolute rock stars to get them to that stage too, just like Tiger in golf. I mean, Gretzky and Lemieux. Even though I hate them, Bonds and Maguire, Jordan, LeBron, Manning,
Brady,
Favre, Brady, all the
Bonds and Maguire, they were drug cheats, weren't they?
Well,
but it was sort of half.
Was it?
It was half allowed back in the day.
Oh, it was, and I despise Mark Maguire and Barry Bonds, but in terms of putting bums on seats and dollars on contracts, they did it for a long time.
Coates, can I ask you a question about that tournament that Hazy hates so much?
Yeah.
What's the point of having an event in the Bahamas, which is one place on planet Earth I've got no interest in going, by the way, hanging around with rich people who live in a tax haven. I don't know why anyone would want to go there for a holiday. So that just put that on the for whatever it's worth. But to my eye, I was kind of half interested in watching it to see what the golf course looked like as much as, Tiger obviously, but it looked to me like that tournament could have been played in the desert. I got no sense from watching the actual golf that, wow, what a beautiful place this is. Ocean lined, and you watch the Fiji International and you go, oh, there's the Coral Coast. That looks like a beautiful place to go. But it didn't look like a particularly beautiful place to me.
It didn't look like it sucked, though, either, did it?
It's the Bahamas. Yeah, but I know it didn't look like it sucked. But do you know what I mean? The course didn't take in. Did it take in sweeping? Like I think the course in Hawaii, you get these dramatic vistas of the ocean, and did I miss the good bits or not?
I think you find the Bahamas is a really low lying. Like we saw it with those hurricanes coming through. How a lot of those islands in that vicinity just got absolutely swamped, whereas Hawaii or Fiji has actually got a bit of, elevation behind the coastline to provide maybe the soil even to do that without the sand. It's not a pretty place.
Is what's bizarre about it that it's sponsored by a motorcycle company in India that doesn't even sell motorcycles in America?
It's very odd. It's very odd.
Mind you, the TV ratings were off the charts.
Yeah, crazy stuff.
Yeah.
You have to go in a minute because you've got a very important... So there's a couple of things I want to talk to you about before you go. Dylan Fratelli wins, was it the Mauritius Open at the same time?
Yeah.
Was he... Now, what was he... Was he using a compass to check where the wind was from?
Which I always assumed was illegal, but I was clearly not, but...
He's using a compass to see where... don't you just put your hand in, your finger in, lick your finger and stick in the air?
In the old days, they used to use the cigarettes to hold the cigarette up. You could see where the smoke was blowing. But
you know where the wind's coming from, don't you? Why do you need a compass for that?
Well, these guys can't get around without a green. I mean, I saw one guy, it was in Queensland, I think, walked on a green, as we see often now, he just reached for the yardage book, opened the book and started reading the green off his book. I mean... I mean, the world's gone mad. It's seriously gone.
Something's got to be done about it. Surely you can't be.
Well, you were using the compass the other day trying to get back onto the freeway, Andy.
That was the worst thing about. Shackelford and I have been bitching about backboarding for a while now. These guys leaving balls around the hole to help the other guys. That was the worst ever with Daniel Berger and Patrick Reed. Patrick Berger was off the front of the 7th green, I think it was. And Reed's ball was a foot short of the hole, almost dead in line, but not quite. And he left the ball there while Berger putted and missed the ball by an inch and went in the hole. It was a foot short of the hole. It was just, sorry, but that's flat out cheating. I mean, technically, the players have to agree to collude to leave a ball by the hole. And if the committee determines that they've both colluded, then they're both disqualified. But they're riding an awfully fine line now, and it's going to stop because the RNA are onto it. But that was the most egregious example of cheating I've ever seen on a tournament that wasn't cheating, but so close to it that
I feel like you're losing the battle on this one.
No.
Do you reckon you're going to win it or not?
Yeah, absolutely.
I thought Grades was going to blow a pooper valve on the PGA Championship coverage.
Yeah.
I mean, the RNA will look at that tape and go, no, we're going to write a rule to stop that. Because and they're going to argue with speeding up play like Lucas Herbert does. It's like, as Huggy said to someone the other day, he said, well, that's the only instance in the game where the modern professional is doing anything to speed up play. Every other single thing they do is slowing the game down, but the only thing they're doing to speed up play is coincidentally when there's a ball around the hole that might help them. It's just a farce.
So
and of course, it's not that it's not that they hit each other very often. It's the fact that it might.
Yeah.
And they're thinking, I'll leave that ball there because it might help me. Well, I mean, seriously? I mean, no one until this generation has played the game that way. No one ever. But that was the most egregious example I'd seen ever was Reed and Berger in Bahamas.
It wasn't good. It was bad.
It was horrific.
There's another issue that's right. Oh, no, it's kind of in your wheelhouse, but there's a thing happening in Australia where we're losing our city public golf courses. And the latest is Albert Park, which is a bit iconic, on the lake there, inner Melbourne. Is this inevitable? I mean, is this just what's going to happen?
I'm not sure it's going to happen. It's been floated, whether it's definite or who knows. But Darius Oliver, I know, who writes for his Planet Golf website, a very astute judge of what's happening in Australia, is very much against losing any public golf. And it's happened in Sydney, happened at Birdswood in Perth. Albert Park's the first threat here in Melbourne. I'm slightly of a different view to Darius, that fine if you want to take some public golf for a park or for sports fields or for whatever else you want to take it for, because it's a big chunk of land. It's probably, the golf course is probably 80 acres right in the middle of Melbourne, pretty much. It's fine if you want to take some of it, but you better invest in the rest to make it better. So Albert Park is not... Well, Sandringham's the best public course in Melbourne by a long way, and it's rated the 99th best public access course in Australia. So public golf's changed massively in the last 20 years. The Dunes, St Andrews Beach, and the courses at Barnbougle and Cape Wickham. We've now got, I think the next rankings come out, I think there are 4 of the top 6 courses in Australia, golf courses in Australia, are public courses in Tasmania. So public golf is, the face of public golf has changed. So my view is if you're going to take golf away from a place like Albert Park, you better invest in what's left and make it much better. So I think you could build a great 9-hole course at Albert Park. Now, whether the people who play it appreciate great architecture is another thing, because it's just a rudimentary golf course for people to start out and play golf, and it's been incredibly popular forever. But if you're going to take some of it, you better invest some in what's left, would be my view.
No surprise with those stats. Fascinating. I didn't realise that until Clayton said that about the 4 out of the top 6.
It's amazing, yeah.
But no surprise that is on the cheapest land in Australia, Tasmania. It's just a real estate value thing. I mean, it has to be. So there's got to be people making money on this stuff, and I agree with Clayton. We need to make sure, the game needs to make sure that it's reinvested the right way.
We'll get any final words on that?
No, it's just fine. And it's happened at a bunch of courses north of the bridge in Sydney. If you're going to take it, you better invest in the rest. Otherwise, you're screwing golf and giving nothing back.
We're going to break out of the way here. Don't go anywhere. We started out this journey 29 weeks ago. We caught up with Ryan Ruffels very, very early on in the piece, and he's going to join us when we come back.
The Golf Australia website is now the place to go to look up your handicap and so much more. Whether you're out and about on your phone or in the office trying to avoid work, just go to golf.org.au and punch your golf link number into the box at the top of the homepage. Who knows, maybe that last round was just good enough to put you in single figures. While you're on the site, check out the daily golf results at your club, view our course index for up-to-date ratings, read the latest golf news from home and abroad, listen to Australian golf podcasts and interviews, and watch video tournament highlights or tips to improve your game. It's everything a golf tragic could want. Visit golf.org.au today, the home of Australian golf.
G'day, my name's Bob Shearer, the 1982 Australian Open champ. When you're listening on the radio, listen to the ropes for all the news and scoops coming up.
So, look, we started the year talking to a young bloke by the name of Ryan Ruffels, whose name is well known to all Australian golf fans, and it just felt right as we're winding up season 1 and the year of 2017 here on Inside the Ropes that we catch up with a young fella again. It's been a great couple of weeks for young Australian golfers, as we've already mentioned off the top, with a couple of 20-somethings winning the two big tournaments over here, and we'll find out how this young fella's travels are playing out as he joins us again on Inside the Ropes. Ryan Ruffels, great to have you on the show again, mate.
No, thanks for having me, guys. It's good to be back on the show.
Now, we'll talk about your year in general and in broad terms in a moment, but how much notice have you been taken of what the Camerons have been doing over in Australia in the last couple of weeks?
No, it's been fantastic. Obviously, Cam Smith I've spent a bit of time with over here this year, and he's doing incredible things, and he's really coming into his own and made a name for himself all over the world this year, which has been fantastic. And Cam Davis, who I've played a bunch of amateur golf with as well, to see him probably struggle for most of the year and then sort of out of nowhere come up and win the Australian Open was just, I mean, it's amazing. And to see even Lucas Herbert, who I've played a lot of golf with, do some great things in all the events too. It's it's a real credit, I think, to Golf Australia, and I think you're going to see a little bit more of that coming up.
Ryan, I know that you want to be back here and playing these events, and your world's taken you in a different zone, but it must gut you to be sort of plodding around, Argentina and Brazil, as exotic as that sounds, when the big Australian events are on. And we'll talk about your season in a second, but does that really hurt when you don't get the chance to come home yet? I'm sure it'll change in a couple of years.
Yeah, very much so. It's because I've been able, not only that, but because I've been able to play Australian Opens at these courses and Masters and PGAs, and so I know the courses well, I know the tournaments well, I know exactly what I'm missing out on. So it's definitely disappointing, but it's what you got to do at this point in your career, and it'll be a lot of fun as soon as I do get back, and I'm really looking forward to that.
Which brings us to your current form, mate, and it was a fantastic end. I know that you probably would have wanted it a little earlier than the fourth round, but the Shell Championship, the season finale on the Latino America Tour, really it sort of demonstrated, that your game's still right there, isn't it? And it was a great finish. You didn't quite make the top five that you were gunning for, but a really solid finish on the order of merit. Yeah,
I mean, it was a year full of learning experiences for me. It was a lot of things that I probably, if I had again, I would do very, very differently. And you can't really learn those things without going through them yourself. And I lost a little bit of form throughout the middle of the year, and something that hasn't happened to me before. I've just sort of played well all the time for a long time. And to sort of lose a bit of form and try and work my way back out of that was trickier than I thought it would be, because when you're younger, you sort of feel invincible, and like that's never going to happen to you. And I definitely lost it, and I went through a few changes and came out the other side. And it's really cool when you start to feel like you come out that other side and you feel like you own all the parts of the game a little bit better. And for me, the biggest, regret, this season is that I didn't put my focus on either my PGA Tour starts or the Latin America. I kind of sort of screwed myself on both ends by taking invites, having to miss events in Latin America. I only got to play 10 out of 19 events in Latin America, which sort of made or put me behind the 8 ball a little bit there. And then my PGA Tour events weren't quite as prepared either because I was sometimes coming from South America. It's a hard position to be in because any chance you get on the main tour, I know I'm good enough to potentially compete out there. So you never want to knock back a start. But in hindsight, putting my focus into one or the other would have been really, really good and something that I'm definitely going to do next year.
I was going to say, Ryan, I saw that. I mean, everyone who made the top 5 played, I think, 17 tournaments or 18 tournaments, and you played 10 or 11. So, and you were 20,000 short. So it seems like,
yeah, I think.
So next year is it would seem to me the plan ought to be to play Latin America until you make whatever you need to make, 70,000 or whatever it is, to guarantee your place at the end of next year. But going back and forth is always a trap, isn't it? Really?
Exactly. You can't do it as much as you want to do it, and it could have worked out. I get hot one event, you win one, and all of a sudden you're a genius and whatever. But it's definitely the plan next year is to make sure you play all of those events down in Latin America. Make sure I do what I need to do down there, and hey, if I pop an invite here or maybe Monday qualify for an event there, and fantastic. But as long as that doesn't get in the way of my plan for the year, which is to nut out to Latin America and make sure that I get in that top 5, because the events that I did play down there, I played quite well. I just didn't get to play enough of them in the end, which was disappointing, but it is what it is, and that's part of the fun. And I guess being 19 doing all this is that next year I'm still not old, so I've got a bit of time to learn.
You're far from old, mate. You're so far away from being old. You're much closer to being young than you are to being. In fact, you are young. So don't lose any patience, please. Whatever you're going through.
Of course not. Of course,
mate. When did that realization dawn upon you that you were potentially doing the wrong thing? Is it something that happened in a blaze, or is it something that sort of dripped into your sort of psyche over the year?
Well, it sort of became, any time that the way I was approaching it sort of towards the start of the year was really, really good. Every time I played a PGA Tour event, I was sort of focusing well there, and when I went down to Latin America, the pressure was off. I went out and had a free run at it, played really well. And then sort of towards the end of the season, when I started to run out of events on Latin America and stuff, and then Latin America didn't anymore become, this is like, I can loosen up out here, I can have a bit of a crack. It became like, okay, I've got to do this. And it was a change of mindset, and I'm looking at that going, well, that's not how I was playing well before on either tour, and and that's where it sort of hit me that, okay, right, we need to, next year, if we don't get it done this year, we need to be pretty focused on one or the other, and I'm really looking forward to playing a full season somewhere, making sure that I can get through that, because you're more prepared for Web.com Tour once you've earned your way onto the Web.com Tour, and you're more prepared for the PGA Tour once you've earned your way through the Web.com Tour. So, I'm looking forward to that.
So 2 steps back to go 3 steps forward in the future, basically?
Pretty much. I think that's probably a good way to put it. And probably I had a few changes sort of go on to my team and stuff a little bit too throughout the year, and everything now is in a really, really good spot, and I'm super happy with everything. Even living over here with Curtis and stuff has been a bunch of fun. So, everything's trending really nicely, and it's sort of disappointing because my game started to trend really nicely these last couple of events, and I sort of just ran out of events. And that sucks, but I know I'm doing the right things, and next year I think will be a lot of fun.
Do you blame anyone for the advice, mate, or is it just something you just live and learn?
No, not at all. You just live and learn. You got to. I mean, it's a hard one, like I said, because Bud Martin, who's my manager, he's doing all the right things. I mean, he's done an incredible job being able to get as many invites as he has, and you can't. It's such a tough position because I nearly did in Canada this year what I was trying to do, and you never know. You knock one out in Canada, and all of a sudden your life changes a bit. So it's hard to knock back a start like that, but in the same breath, it's sort of give or take. At some point, you got to have to, and like I said, it's just one of those things. Part of the reason in turning pro early is that, hey, if I learn these lessons now when I'm 18, 19, I'm a lot better off than if I learn these lessons when I'm 23, 24. And I think it's been really, really cool, and to now have maybe about a year and, I guess, 8 months doing this as a professional to really sort of nut out what my path is going to be to the PGA Tour and how I'm going to get there is I'm probably a lot clearer now than when I turned pro, and it was kind of just a bit of a dream as opposed to knowing exactly how I was going to do it.
Ryan, you've got to have people around you, obviously, right? And this is a conversation we've been having on this podcast for a while, so I'll ask you because you'll live in it. If you didn't have a traditional golf manager, a Bud Martin type manager, how would that affect what you're doing? Could you see yourself getting to where you want to go as a player without a manager like Bud?
It makes it. You can definitely still do it. It makes it a lot harder, though. I think some of the experiences that I've been able to have as an amateur and a professional now, playing on that main stage, whether I got through them or not, holds me in a lot better stead for when I do get there. And not only that, the funding that is able to get put behind me because of contracts and stuff, Bud's been able to negotiate. It just puts you in a really good spot and a nice platform to start from. It doesn't necessarily guarantee success, and it doesn't mean that somebody who doesn't have that can't be successful, but it gives you a really nice pedestal to start on and a little bit of a head start. And but yeah, by no means if you don't have that, can you not be successful, but it helps a lot. And he's been, not only that, but he's been a big influence just on me personally, being around the game for a long time and seeing the Jason Days, the Leishmans, and how they battled through tough times, good times, and to end up where they are now. And all of that sort of comes together pretty nicely, and it can help out someone like me a lot.
I want to swerve a bit. Did you play the tournament at the Jockey Club in Argentina?
Yeah, I did. What a fantastic course.
Yeah, well, that was what I was going to ask you. Bruce Devlin and David Graham won the World Cup there in 1970, and it's Mackenzie's kind of one great course in South America. I always wondered what it was like. So can you run us through?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
If it was similar to what we have of Mackenzie's work in Australia, or it was different, or how was it really?
Yeah, definitely some differences, but a lot of similarities too. A lot of the green, it was nice to play a course that didn't have rough 2 feet off the edge of the green. The greens ran off into collection areas, ran off the greens, and it was all tight lies around the fairways, and having bunkers that cut into the greens as well, and always having big wide fairways, but parts of fairways that were no good to attack the greens and pins from, and so really. And like having some true fairways was nice. They didn't have the right grass on the greens, which made it tricky. The greens played really soft, while the surrounds played very firm, which was a bit disappointing. But other than that, just being able to play shots that I'm used to playing back home in Australia, where you're not just hitting 3 irons in the par fives, and they can be coming in hot, but they end up 2 feet off the green because it gets caught up in rough. Where shots that are a little bit off with wedges and with chips and everything run off the greens quite considerably, and you've got to really think your way around the golf course. So that was a lot of fun to play a Mackenzie course again, because you don't play that much unless I'm back home in Australia.
It was funny, I was playing with Finchy yesterday at Kingston Heath, and we were talking about the influence of Augusta, and most people perceive that influence to be negative in terms of ultra green, ultra perfect conditions, ultra white sand. But the amazing thing about Augusta is it has no influence in America in terms of short grass around the greens. I mean, certainly not on the tour. Yeah. So people say, well, Augusta has a big influence. I would say Augusta has almost zero influence on normal American clubs that just insist on growing long grass around the greens. It's bizarre to me.
Yeah, I think it makes it more playable. Having no rough around the greens, I reckon, makes it more playable for the average golfer and a lot harder for the good golfer, because it gives the average golfer the choice of the putter, the scrape shot along the ground, but makes it very, very hard for the professional golfer to get up and down, because you're obviously further from the hole, it's trickier, it's firmer, it's harder to get the ball closer. So I think, looking at some of these classic Mackenzie designs, and that one in particular, I prefer that sort of golf. The course doesn't have to be. The scores that week were very, very high or tough, and the course was not very long. I had a lot of wedges into greens. Fairways were nice and wide, and that wasn't the challenge that week. It was very much being in the proper side of fairways, being in the proper side of greens to then attack even with the putter. And that's something you don't get so much in the US, and that when you do, it's a nice change.
Yeah.
All right, mate, we need to get away from golf and we need to find out what life is like in the Ruffels household in Florida. We would need the inside word, mate.
Oh, mate, it's a lot of fun. You've got a 21-year-old and a 19-year-old living over here in the US. We're not too far from the University of Florida. We have a bit of fun. Curtis's 21st was back in July, and so we had a bit of a party for him, and just even daily stuff. We miss good coffee over here, so we're always on the hunt for good coffee places around Orlando, and we've got pretty good ritual where we found a place and we get some coffee in the morning and practice and gym and all that good stuff, and then it's been really healthy, really good. I haven't seen him in a few months. He's been over there, so I've been sort of on my own over here for a few months, but he's back pretty soon, and we'll continue on doing what we do.
Any abuse of the accent?
Any abuse of the accent? Yeah, a little bit, definitely.
So do you still
Definitely.
You're obviously, we watch a lot of American sport over here on our tallies, but obviously we watch a lot of Australian sport as well. Have you been kind of completely indoctrinated now? Are you more NBA, NFL, college sport, or do you still find a way in the middle of your routine to catch up with, NRL, AFL, spring carnivals, whatever it might be that presses your buttons back home?
Oh, he's a pies boy, Andy.
What do you say? How many Collingwood games, for example, did you get to see this year?
Yeah, I got to see quite a few. I mean, I can't stay away from the AFL because my caddy this year was a Richmond supporter, so I get pretty in the loop with all of that. So, I definitely keep up with my Aussie sports. I've never been a big NRL or rugby guy at all, but I've been keeping up with the AFL quite a bit. I try to get into the American sports a little bit. I'm not that into them. I've been to a few Magic games here because the club has some courtside tickets, and Curtis and I have gone to a few games. And they're fantastic. The spectacle over here that's half of it. It's not just the game; it's the whole spectacle they've got around it. It's like a theatre production. But yeah, try and keep up with my Aussie sports as much as possible. Keeping up with the Ashes at the moment, so as much as I can, try and stay in the loop, because if I not, I get grilled by my mates back home.
Good on you. Last one from me. I don't know whether the other boys have got anything, but if I asked you for a personal highlight for you from 2017. We started doing this podcast about 30 weeks ago, and you're, as we said at the start, you're one of our first really special guests on the show. We follow your career really closely back here. If I asked you for a highlight from the year, from your own personal perspective, what would jump out at you?
For me, probably the Canadian Open this year was that was one of the coolest experiences I've been through as a professional. Anyway, to be able to be in contention on a Sunday of a PGA Tour event. I played on that second last group on Sunday, and didn't obviously play the way I wanted to at all on that Sunday. But just that experience of feeling that, seeing the sort of what goes on a Sunday late in the afternoon, and how the course plays, how the gallery is, and that experience is just something money can't buy, and something that you can learn a lot from, and just that sort of that feeling inside you to shoot 14 under for the first three rounds, and to be right there, and to play amongst those leading groups is something that is going to hold me in great stead, but was just a hell of a lot of fun to do at the time.
So let me ask you, I was hoping you might say that, because you have the experience you have in the last round. Do you learn more from shooting 14 under in the first three rounds, or do you take more from what happened to you on the Sunday? What do you learn more? Actually, you think's going to hold you instead down the track. What do you take more away from?
I think people always say you learn a lot from your disappointments, and that's true to a sense. But I learned a lot more that week from the first three, because it's not easy to back up one round on the PGA Tour with another good one, and then not only that, to do it again. And I played with Charlie Hoffman on the third round in a 2-ball, and to play with him, and he lost in a playoff that week, but he sort of took control of the tournament on Saturday, and to be able to really stick it with him for most of the round, and I shot 4 and he shot 6 that day, So he got me, but to be able to really stick it with him, and he's obviously a very, very quality player, top 20 in the world, and he's won a bunch of tournaments. To be able to be there on Saturday, so I'm on the weekend, a bit nervous, to be able to stick it with him on Saturday and really push myself up into the mix on Sunday, I took a lot out of personally. And, yeah, I didn't quite do it on Sunday, but for me to feel like I was able to do it on Saturday, it gives me good confidence when I get there again. I'm going to know a lot more about how to handle myself, and I'm hopefully be able to do it the same thing I did on Saturday on Sunday.
Ryan, we really appreciate you taking the time to join us, as you always have, and you're always very great with your time. But it's more of a statement rather than a question. But I think it's important for all our listeners to realise that, you know, we do follow everyone around the world. We do our best to actually piece everything together here. And even if we don't get to you very often, it's something that, you know, as Andy says, we're in your corner and we're watching what you're doing, even if it's in, you know, Ecuador or wherever it is. So keep up the fight, mate. Everyone's in your corner, and we can't wait to see you on a more, I guess, television-friendly stage soon.
That's right, yeah. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it, yeah. And I know you guys are always watching, and, yeah, no, it means a lot. And even you guys text me to come on the show. I really appreciate that, and it's nice to chat to you guys, and anytime.
Hi, this is Sherelle McMahon. Swing Fit is the fun, healthy, social way for women to get started in golf. You'll learn the basics of the golf swing and how to putt over a 6-week program, and get your whole body moving through yoga and Pilates-style exercises. You don't need any golf knowledge or equipment. Simply turn up in comfy clothing and get started. You'll be surrounded by like-minded people and receive constant support. So get outdoors, meet new friends, and learn a sport that you can play for the rest of your life. To find a program near you, visit swingfit.com.au.
Peter Senior here. Really enjoy listening inside the ropes. You guys have always got something very interesting to talk about. Hope you enjoyed the program.
Great to have Ryan Ruffels on the show again, Hazy. Clates has departed now for greener pastures, literally. He's got a golf date with a couple of luminaries, Suo and Ian Baker Finch Principal among them.
I can't believe he'd ditch us for them.
I'd be ditching you for them. Hand on that.
I'd ditch myself for them if I could.
Yeah. Just a quick word on Ryan. You made a point at the end of letting him know that we are watching and we are interested and we know what he's doing. Why did you do that?
Yeah, I didn't want to make it sound like, it was either condescending or wrapping him up too much, but I think he's playing in just about the furthest flung part of professional golf in the world. I mean, maybe you go and play the MENA Tour, the Middle East, North African sort of thing, but not many do that. For someone who's in the collective psyche of Australian golf fans, to be ploughing away through, Peru and Bolivia and these sort of places, it's so far off the grid. And if things don't go well, as we've seen a couple of other guys down there, Ryan McCarthy, for example, previously, you're a long way from anywhere in all senses, in terms of cards, of progression to tours, in terms of, emergencies or whatever. So I actually just wanted to let him know that, we were watching and, you're not completely forgotten no matter where you get to here. It's, one of those things where if you're plodding away and not making money in Argentina or, Uruguay, you could easily slip off the radar, and he's too important to us for that.
Particularly for a player like him who knows that he's, without saying this in a cocky, arrogant way, he knows he's better than that tour. So, he believes he is, and we all think he is.
Yes.
So, you can't spend too much time down there, but you've got to stay patient. You can't get too far ahead of yourself and get panicked by the fact that you haven't escaped, in inverted commas, to one of yours. You haven't escaped it sooner rather than later, because this is a tough game. Like, there's a lot of good players around, and I know he wants to be playing and probably feels like he's good enough to be playing on the PGA Tour now. But you got to do your time, and you got to do the hard yards. And as much as he knows that he's capable of better things and bigger things, I hope he doesn't get too frustrated by his inability to make it happen sooner rather than later.
To me, I was really impressed and relieved almost to hear him say, he's prepared to go and do it again.
Yeah.
I think that's critical because we've talked about the Cams already, and they've done yards on on different tours. Even Cam Davis has been out of sight on the Mackenzie Tour in Canada, but he even without success, he's played it and he's understood the rigours of it. Don't think we appreciate really the difficulties of flipping between the PGA Tour and then some event in Argentina, like Ryan was saying.
Oh God, no!
It'd be very tough. And I know that he's spoken the praises there of Bud Martin, and you cannot as an 18-year-old turn your back on 7 or 8 starts on the US PGA Tour. That's monumental. But by the same token, I think he's realised, as he said himself, and I'm still young enough, and he's only 19, I'm still young enough to have realised that, in some ways, the error of my ways. I need to go and progress and be willing to not start my, hopefully, golden run at the big picture events until I'm 21, 22. And if he can make it into the top 5 next year on the Latino America Tour, progress to the web.com that way, even if he takes a couple of years to get to the US PGA Tour from there, he's still going to be 21 or 22. I mean, he's got the world at his feet, and we don't want to rush him there because, he's still learning.
So that's Ryan Ruffels. There's a couple of bits and pieces before we wrap up. It's the time of players securing jobs for next year, and when depending on when you're listening to this, Cam Davis is trying to do that on final stage of Webb. For the men and the women, there's been some great news in the last kind of 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 days.
Yeah, and one of my favourites is Rebecca Artis, so we might start there if that's all right. And we'd sort of been hoping, and we didn't want to bring it up, we'd been hoping that she might pick up the phone, but right now, as we're recording this, it's 1:45 midday on Thursday morning, Melbourne time.
Yep.
And she's asleep in Dubai, and she's got a tea time later her morning this morning in the Dubai Ladies Classic, I think it's called, on the last event on the LET Tour for the year. And that's been really important to her, that tour, for a long time. A dual winner, a ripping young lady from Coonabarabran in, I don't even know what you call it, but probably central New South Wales.
It's a great part of the world. Good pub in Coonabarabran.
Best clock tower you see going around too, Andy. But anyway, we probably digress a little there.
Yes.
She's basically doesn't have to go back to LET next year because she's done a tremendous achievement, fulfilled a tremendous goal to make the LPGA Tour. So she's gone through the 5 rounds, the grueling 5 rounds of the final stage. She came through Q2 as well before she got to the final stage. And Rebecca Artis has got a full card for the LPGA Tour for next year. And it looks like we're probably not going to quite get her this morning on the podcast. I hope you're still listening to this, Beck. We're really proud of you. Couldn't happen to a nicer girl, and her husband Jeff's a complete lunatic on the bag, and they've done the hard yards this year. We mentioned it in a podcast recently, the kilometres they'd undertaken. This one today in Dubai is to make sure she had the minimum number of LET starts. She's done that. She'll have status there if she needs to, but let's hope she doesn't need to and she makes a motza on the LPGA next year.
So that's the women's side. I was rapt to see Anthony Quayle join a couple of his countrymen up in Japan. That's just a good story. That's not necessarily a name that is going to be front and centre.
No.
Even for a lot of people who follow the game of golf and love the game of golf, but that's just a good story.
3 great names up there that aren't front and centre, as you say. Let's start there. Anthony Quayle was good enough to be one of the 6 who represented Australia at the Asia Pacific Amateur Championship in 2016. So a highly thought of amateur, but turned without the fanfare of some of his peers. And he's had a really good year on the Australian PGA Tour. I think capped probably by 2 top 20 finishes, a 14th and a 19th in New South Wales and Australia, but he's actually had some top 10s as well in the lower tier events. A really nice, solid, professional start for him in his rookie campaign. But in a 6-round event in Japan, he's never further away than probably 5th or 6th on the leaderboard the whole way, finished 4th, got his card, a full card. That'll get him pretty much full status except for the Japanese majors. A huge achievement for a young guy from the Northern Territory originally, based on the Gold Coast, and a nicer guy you won't meet. So good on you, Quayle. More kudos from us. And you've been joined by 2 names that are, just left field. Aaron Wilkins done a fantastic effort to get there. I think he was 23rd, but a name that if you rack your brain, Andy, you'll find Andrew Evans and you'll go, oh, yeah, I remember that.
That's a great story. I'm so happy for him.
Yeah, he was the bloke Do you remember the? You remember the days at Huntingdale?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
He was the guy who came out of the pro shop in Sydney and pushed Peter Senior to the brink in the last time he won the gold jacket at Huntingdale, and everyone thought, "Oh, who's this bloke? Geez, he plays well," and then he's gone. And we hadn't heard another peep out of him. I just assumed he was selling Mars bars again, to be honest. And here he is. He finished 16th in Japan, gets a lot of status on the big tour. So 3 guys joining the guys who have already held their cards, Blandy and Griffo, etc. So huge achievement up there by those 3 guys. And again, kudos.
Hey, couldn't agree with you more.
G'day, I'm My Golf Ambassador Jason Day. I'm really excited to be an ambassador for My Golf, Australian Golf's national junior program, jointly run by Golf Australia and the PGA. My Golf is every Aussie kid's first step on their golfing pathway. It's all about teaching children the basic skills of golf in a safe and healthy environment, and just as importantly, about the life skills that golf can teach you that distinguish our sport from the rest. Remember to visit mygolf.org.au for more information.
Hi, my name is Soyeon Yu, who plays on the LPGA Tour, and I love Vegemite, but I love Cedro more than Vegemite.
From a tournament perspective, on domestic soil, the women's got a boost late this week. Again, it's nearly midday Thursday at point of talking, so you probably know this by now, but isn't it great that one of our absolute favourites on this podcast is going to be down here in the new year?
I'm excited about this, and
I know you are.
And Clayton,
have your Vegemite at the ready.
Yeah, we promised. It probably started back right in this very studio, Andy. We're going to claim it anyhow. Why wouldn't we?
Yep.
So Yeon Yu is coming back to play the Australian Open, Women's Australian Open at Kooyonga in February next year. Great announcement that I know that ISPS Handler was thrilled when they, the title sponsor of the event, when she signed, because, she's such a popular player around the world and she really helps spread their message. So going to be taking a bit of Vegemite over to pay our debts,
That's
Andy,
great.
shoving a big tub of it in a locker at Kooyonga, but we're thrilled that the person who was, I wouldn't say the dominant force, but one of the key players anyhow, and number one for probably half the year on the LPGA Tour this year, or the Rolex World Rankings, is signed up to play. That's on top of Hana Jang and some other big announcements coming up in the weeks to come.
That's great. And we'd like seeing world-class players in Australia. We understand why we don't. We've spoken enough about that, particularly in the last few weeks on the podcast. But Metro gets the World Cup next year. Great course, great quality players, great event. It's just something to put in the calendar and look forward to.
Yeah, and I'm not claiming any knowledge of any of this at all, because clearly I would have probably tried to leak a little bit of it to you guys if I could. But the vexing problem of no championship golf in Melbourne has been, I wouldn't say eradicated, because clearly we need an annual tournament if it's at all possible for most of our major cities if it's possible. But we've gone from nothing to having the President's Cup in 2019, then the 2 Australian Opens in 2020 and 2022, and now the World Cup in Victoria in 2018. So we've got 4 of the next 5 years covered for Victorian listeners of this. That promises to be a huge event next year. So what's happened is the Australian Open has moved forward a week, still being played at the Lakes. So that'll be I'm forgetting the dates right now.
We won't hold you to that.
It'll be like around the 20th of November, maybe a day or so earlier. Then the World Cup at Metro, which hasn't seen a thing like this since the WGC, which apparently we used to be able to hold WGCs, Andy, but I don't want to start ranting this late in the podcast.
No, be happy.
And then up to Royal Pines for the 3rd week in a row of great world-class golf in Australia next summer. So that's a huge boon for everyone.
And it's obvious you hope there's a bit of, filter either side of the World Cup, don't you? You hope that you get, a couple of them getting out here early to at least acclimatise themselves with Australian conditions, and then you get a couple at the end. Wouldn't it be nice if a whole bunch of them decided to play for 3 weeks here? And obviously that'll be the aim of all organisers, to try and encourage people to come down here for a month and, have a go.
Yeah, the one hiccup there is potentially the Australian Open falling on the date of the Race to Dubai final.
Yep.
So we might miss out seeing the key European players at the Australian Open, but the flip side is that people like Graham McDowell and others have already expressed their desire to come back and represent their country, and especially to play at the Sandbelt. So if we can get them from the Sandbelt up to the Gold Coast, I reckon that's got to sound like a pretty good way to finish their year.
Sounds like a pretty good way to finish the podcast. Me, anything else you want to put on the agenda?
One last one. And it's been remiss of me, and he's the sharpest dressed bloke you'll see on a golfing tour, and he's Bryden McPherson.
Oh, yes.
And I for some reason, I've been remiss in mentioning his achievements this year, because he was off the grid a fair bit, to be honest, the last couple of years. I reckon he'd say the same thing. I love watching him play.
Too good a player to be off the grid.
Yeah, and just an absolute fashionista.
Oh, yes.
He's a very debonair young man.
Sharp operator.
Lost a playoff in the final event of the China Tour event this year, this last weekend just gone. So great effort there. Came from 3 or 4 back in the final 6 or 7 holes to force a playoff, and then watched his Chinese opponent make a putt to beat him in the playoff, which was obviously hard luck. But the second part of that was, had he won, he would have won the Order of Merit too, but he finished second on the Order of Merit. So 2 runner-up finishes for Bryden McPherson, and more than a little golf clap, mate. That's a great achievement, and it's so good to be able to wrap this section of the podcast up, Andy, with so many wonderful things for people who don't often get the kudos they deserve.
And it just underlines yet again that it's a country that just punches way above its weight. There's some fantastic female and male representatives. Every corner of the globe, there's Australians out there who are, competing and looking to take their game to the next level. And it's terrific to be able to recognise some, hopefully most of them, at some stage on the way through on a show like this. So,
yeah. And also, sorry, it just keeps bobbing into my mind, so I apologise for the flow. I know you're all about the flow, and I've got
Never
nothing.
about the flow. Never about the flow.
The Queens, which is a team tournament the ALPG competed in against the Korean LPGA, Japanese LPGA, and the LET. Started off wobbly against the might of the... Well, it's actually a really interesting, quirky format. You're playing against everyone, but Korea sort of knocked everyone into submission day one, which left us in a bit of a hole. Nearly got into the final against Korea, but had to contend ourselves with the 3rd, 4th playoff, and we beat the Europeans, which I think is a great achievement for our squad, led by Kari Webb. Well done, girls.
It sounds like a pretty good note to finish it on. Hazy, there's a bit of housekeeping we should knock over before we finish up. We've got a few bits and pieces we just should tick off.
Yeah, and as always, our delightful friend Greg Oakford's put these in about 3 points, so my eyes are really going to struggle in this light, Andy.
Let me know if you need a hand, because I've got it covered.
Thank you. I need a magnifying glass.
Right.
We've up to 71 5-star reviews, which is phenomenal, and we're really grateful for all our listeners for their support over the first 29 episodes of this podcast, and special mention this week to Green Hippo, and also to Mick O'Toole, I think it is, all in one word, and that's an interesting spelling there, Mick, so I hope I got that okay. From Green Hippo, great podcast with some great guests. Any chance we can get some of Australia's best coaches, for example, Ban or Lynch, on the show and discuss the biggest faults in the amateur game, such as, where are we there, casting, slices, and everything in between. I hope I can read that seriously. Well. Otherwise, love the show and look forward to it each week. Thanks from Mick. Well, Mick, we'll do that.
Absolutely,
we love the coaches, and Lynchy, for example, is a great character, and he'd add greatly to the show. So we'll get him back next year. And the other one was from Mick O'Toole. Listened to your latest podcast and then went back to episode 1. And now I'm fully up to date. Keep up the good work. Well,
jeez, you've done well. That's an outstanding performance.
Yeah. So thanks,
there is going to be one more after this to listen out for. We'll do a special show next week. Everybody who's contributed to the program from a studio perspective is going to be picking out their favourite bits and pieces from the 2017 version of Inside the Ropes, so you can hear what we consider to be our favourite moments on a special edition next week.
And I think we'll be back next year, Andy, bigger and stronger. Is that? Well, I've been sort of intimating that through the show.
We'll just wait for confirmation of that, Hazy.
All right. Well, I'll probably let the cat out of the bag there. But anyway, so a special thank you to all who've helped us so far, and most importantly, probably behind the scenes that people don't realise, Craig Davis, who's the man who makes all this audio sing.
I got very excited when I heard we were working with Craig Davis. As a Carlton supporter who grew up, Craig Davis, number 19, I thought, that's what's happened to Craig Davis, Buff Davis. It's going to be fantastic working with him, and it wasn't him, and I've never been more disappointed in all my life to meet the Craig Davis we were working with, but he's a hell of a bloke. Barracks for the Collingwood Footy Club, which is a bit disappointing, but other than that, he's a pretty good bloke, really, so couldn't have done it without him.
He's made us sound reasonable, which is a phenomenal achievement,
Yes.
to be honest. So we'd like to thank the whole team from RSN 927 for their production assistance and just general support, and also Justin Falconer.
Oh, he's been a superstar.
He's done a lot of things around the social media in particular. I'm not praising Greg Oakford. I've done enough of that.
Exactly.
I think just a huge thanks to everyone behind the scenes. Everyone hears our voices, but it's not us who make it happen.
And for you to listen, it'd be pointless doing it. As much as we enjoy each other's company in here, it'd be pointless to do it if there wasn't anybody listening on the other end. So thanks for doing that. That's the end of EP 29. Hopefully you enjoy the best of next week, and we'll catch up again in 2018.